What is good, everyone? Welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a second episode talking about ukiyo-e, or Japanese woodblock prints. The first video I did a few weeks ago actually got a lot of interest from people who started DMing me saying they wanted to see my collection and they wanted me to talk more about how to verify prints. And so I thought over the next couple of weeks I would do a few ukiyo-e videos. The first of which today I'm going to show you some of my collection, the prints that I've actually kept over the years. And I'll probably do a how to authenticate video coming up in the upcoming weeks after this one. But first of all, if you haven't heard this story before, I walked into a small countryside antique store in the middle of Yamanashi Prefecture and saw a set of woodblock prints basically tucked away in a corner where they weren't really even on display. And I saw one that I really loved and had to buy, and I bought it, took it home, realized I have no idea what this is. I didn't know anything about woodblock prints at that point, and that started the whole thing of me doing research, learning about these prints, discovering what I could about them. And in the end, what ended up happening is I went a little bit crazy and bought a good number of prints, and discovered when I moved back to the States for graduate school that I could actually make a profit selling prints in the States that I bought in Japan. So I kept in contact with some of the dealers that I had made contact with while living in Japan, continued to get some supply, and was basically selling prints in the States, and that helped pay for graduate school. So I've had several thousand prints pass through my hands, basically. I haven't kept all that many, and the ones that I've kept, I kept mostly for very personal reasons. So that's what I'd like to talk about today. Let's take a look at my ukiyo-e Japanese woodblock prints collection. Now, before we get into today's collection, it is customary in Japan to pour drinks for others when socializing, rather than pouring your own drink. So, if you would be so kind as to top up the like button's beer and pour a fresh glass of sake for the subscribe button. After doing that, let's get into the collection. This print is by the Kyoto artist Meiji Asada, and I also bought this directly through the publisher. It was actually listed as sold out on the publisher's website, but I emailed them and said, you don't happen to have another copy? And they said, oh sure, we do have one that we can sell you. So it doesn't hurt to ask. But Meiji Asada's work is pretty popular, as you can see. Pretty popular theme of Kyoto. This is of Kiyomizu-dera temple in Kyoto under moonlight. Keeping with the 20th century theme, I'm going to show you mostly my 20th century prints first. I have a few that are actually on display in the house at the moment. I'm not going to show those. That'll have to wait for a future video. But I tend to change my prints with the season. I look at this print and I tend to think of it as more of a fall-winter piece, so this might go on the wall in around fall or winter. This next print is also from the same publisher. I basically bought those two prints, this one and the Meiji Asada, at the same time. And if you buy from the publisher, they will come with this watermark. This is Uchida, the publisher. And underneath on the cardboard backing, they do have information about the prints themselves in English and in Japanese. So if you want to buy from Uchida Art Company, they are a Kyoto printmaker, and you can find them on the internet. This is also Kiyomizu-dera Temple in the rain, but with the sakura blossoms giving that splash of pink color. This next print is a 20th century print, but this one happens to be a licensed reproduction. It is not an original of Kotondo Tori's woman combing her hair. And this particular print I just found so striking and decided I wanted to keep it. I had 2 more of these prints from this series, and I sold the other 2, but I kept this one. And I happened to have the privilege of seeing an original in a display at the Chazen Art Museum in Madison, Wisconsin. They have an original, and the differences between the reprint and the original are pretty striking. In this background, it's a much more delicate gradation of blue, and there's actually this kind of aquamarine green color. So the gradation isn't just these 2 simple blue colors. There's actually green in there, and it's much more subtle color changing. The ring on the finger of the woman in the original is silver, not gold. And finally, it's much smaller. The original is kind of in the traditional obon, about 36 centimeters by 26 centimeters paper. This is considerably larger, and as such, it has, in a direct comparison sense, a much less delicate look to it than the original. Honestly, as much as I love this print, I have to admit the original is actually far, far more gorgeous. Now for prints in my main folder. This is another Mount Fuji print. This is entitled Fujiyoshida, which you can see in the margin here. And this is the town that I lived in when I first moved to Japan. Before moving here, I had never heard of Fujiyoshida, but now I consider it to be my hometown in this country. And that view, essentially, of Mount Fuji right there is exactly what I saw outside of my window every single day. This exact angle of the mountain, this slash right here, that kind of lightning flash, is represented in the view that I could see. And this is a Shiro Kasamatsu print, also 20th century. Doesn't command a particularly high price, but for sentimental value, I of course had to have this print. On the other side of it, I have this print by Tomokichiro. He's a printmaker who did kind of classic series of Japans that so many printmakers have done. He has his Views of Kyoto series and his Views of Mount Fuji series. This is from the Views of Kyoto. This is Yasaka Jinja. I had a number of these, and I kept this one because it commemorates in my mind the very first time I went to Kyoto and spent New Year's, and basically spent New Year's at Yasaka Jinja. Okay, let's get into the Meiji era prints that I have, starting with this one. This is the one that started it all. This is the print that I saw in that antique store so long ago, bought it. It's actually 3 pages. This is 1 page. That's Tokugawa Ieyasu versus Sanada Yukimura. Battle scene. This print was one that I just fell in love with, bought, and it started everything. Continuing on with some other Meiji era prints, I have several of these prints. They're called triptychs, or 3-page prints, featuring Uesugi Kenshin, the famous warlord of the Shinshu region, versus Takeda Shingen, the famous warlord of the Kai region, or what is now modern-day Yamanashi, where I lived. And so the reason for me keeping these particular prints should be pretty obvious. Takeda Shingen is the lord of the province where I lived, and so collecting prints with him on it seemed like a no-brainer. So I kept a lot of Takeda Shingen prints. Now, of course, this is actually a kabuki print. These are actually portraits of kabuki actors portraying Uesugi Kenshin and Takeda Shingen. This is a print by Chikanobu. And up here you can see names of characters in yellow, so Takeda Shingen. And then you have the names of the kabuki actors who played Takeda Shingen, and that's the Nakamura family, a famous family of kabuki actors, and Ishikawa family. So I have several of these. This is another one. This is a different print. Again, same theme. This battle of Kawa Nakajima between Uesugi Kenshin and Takeda Shingen. The Kawa Nakajima battles happened, I think, 3 times between these two, and they were always somewhat indecisive. But the most famous one is the one where they allegedly met each other during the battle, like actually came face to face. Kenshin attacked with his sword, and Takeda fended off the sword with his war fan. He didn't actually have a sword out. He fended off the attack with his fan. And now, it's not a paper and cloth fan, it's a war fan, so they're heavy, they're made of iron, so yeah, it could actually conceivably ward off a sword blow. And yet another, again, these are all kabuki style prints, or I should say kabuki actors representing the characters. So Uesugi Kenshin once again, Takeda Shingen, you can see him warding off the sword with this fan. And then one final one over here, Takeda Shingen and Uesugi Kenshin. And that's Yamamoto Kansuke, who is one of Takeda Shingen's most famous, probably the most famous general of Takeda Shingen's. And this is probably the most valuable of these triptych Kenshin versus Takeda prints, because this one happens to be by, where's the signature? It happens to be by the artist Yoshitoshi, who probably most famous for his 100 Aspects of the Moon. Also did a lot of bloody samurai prints and bloody ghost and demon prints that are very, very popular. He's one of the more popular artists in the Ukiyo-e Hanga collecting world, and happened to find one of the triptychs of Takeda Shingen and Uesugi Kenshin done by him. I don't know if it's any more rare than the others, but it is certainly more valuable because the artist is just more famous. This one was a Chikanobu. This one was a Kunichika. And the first one here's another second Kunichika, and the first one I showed you was a Chikanobu. Those happen to be more common, it seems. Also, under the same theme, this print here is of a battle of Kawa Nakajima. However, this is not between Takeda Shingen. This is actually his son. You still see the Takeda family name, but that's not Shingen's name kanji. This is his son commanding the battle. This is another Yoshitoshi print of Takeda Shingen. Instead of in battle, he's deep in thought, and the print is supposed to be in, well, where the modern city of Kofu in Yamanashi Prefecture. This is where the capital of Kai was. And again, Takeda Shingen, done by Yoshitoshi. It was a print that made a lot of sense for me to keep my hands on rather than sell it. You can see all of these marks here are the Takeda Shingen, or the Takeda family crest. So you'll see that on a lot of these Takeda prints in one way or another. And the pride of this Takeda Shingen collection is right here, because this is from Yoshitoshi. His most famous signature style is this one right here. And this is of Takeda Shingen from the 100 Aspects of the Moon series, Yoshitoshi's most famous series of prints. And it's lovely because it also contains moonlight view and Mount Fuji, and it's actually a fanciful imagining because this is a Mount Fuji view from what would be Shizuoka Prefecture now. This is a view from the ocean, and Takeda Shingen never actually won his way to the ocean. In this day and age, salt was just as precious a commodity as it was in Europe. We're talking, the 1400s, 1500s, and having access to the ocean, i.e., having access to salt, was a big deal. And although Takeda Shingen fought battles to try to gain access to the ocean, he never actually managed to gain territory like that. And so this is kind of an imagining by the artist Yoshitoshi of Takeda Shingen viewing Mount Fuji from a province he never actually managed to conquer. Over here, this is no longer Takeda Shingen themed, but it is a Yoshitoshi print. This is a good example of how print trimming can happen. This was actually originally a print that was 2 parts. It was 2 scenes on a single page, and they were cut apart. Hence why I was able to get this one for relatively inexpensive, because it's not complete. But this is a Yoshitoshi print, his older signature here, and it's these comic scenes from Edo. So every scene that would be on these pages is some sort of comedic, something funny is happening. In this case, the lion dancer is peeking up under the kimono of a woman on the street. So that's the humor there. Now this next one kind of looks like it might be another Uesugi Kenshin Takeda Shingen print, but it is not. This is actually a Japanese folk tale. Again, it is done by kabuki actors. So you have the character name in yellow and then the actual kabuki actor who's playing the part. In this, it's a warrior versus a demon woman. You can kind of see the claw there. And turn the page. And the story goes, this demon pretended to look like the warrior's nurse from when he was a child, but he recognized it for the trick that it was, and he attacked the demon, cut off the demon's arm. This is why the arm is severed, and the demon is fleeing with the arm in its mouth. I like this particular print because I like how this autumn scene with the leaves and colored leaves floating in the air, and you have these deliberate cut streaks in the background helping to represent the wind, or this sort of turmoil in the air during this battle. It's details like that, so you can see this. I'm sorry, it's hard under the plastic, but you can see these fanciful streaks representing the wind, which I think gives the print a particular motion sense and a stronger dynamic feeling. And it's really hard to come across prints of demons and ghosts that are affordable, because those are always very, very popular. And I happen to get quite a good deal on this one, and so it's honestly the only ghost or demon print that's in my collection. Like I said, they're just hard to get a hand on, and they're quite expensive. So that's why I've kept this one. So I have at least one in my collection. This other print is another triptych of kabuki actors. I kept this particular one because it is in really excellent condition. The margins are trimmed, but the colors are incredibly strong, vibrant. I actually showed my collection to the curator at the Chazen Museum, and this was his favorite. When he looked at this one, he said, this one is really in excellent condition. The colors are awesome. So I may have thought about selling this at one point, but having the curator of a museum tell you that this is an incredible print kind of makes you want to keep it. I display these prints from Meiji and Edo era. Now, Meiji era, we're talking from the 1860s until about 1920. I don't remember the exact years. But I display these less because the inks are more prone to fading in light than the 20th century prints. I do display them just for shorter lengths of time. Oftentimes in the margin or in the labels you can see what or when they were made. This particular print. So here we have the characters for Meiji, and this says 5 Meiji Gonen Junigatsu. So this was the 5th year of Meiji and December, 12th month. So December of the 5th year of Meiji, this print was created. I do have one other print of Yoshitoshi's 100 Aspects of the Moon. And this is from the Heikei Monogatari, the story of 2 samurai families in conflict with each other. This is Kamakura Beach. Anyone who's visited Japan has been to Kamakura. In this particular scene in the story, he's offering his sword to the waves, and the next day they awake to find the beach or the tide has retreated, and there's a strip of land with which he and his army can escape. And so the sacrifice worked. This is a lovely print. I love the story behind the print, and it is one of the earlier printings of it. You still have, it's hard to see on the camera, I know, but you still have nice wood grain pattern in the background of the print. And again, one of the tricks of identifying eras of prints is how the inks themselves look. This particular one, you get this kind of burnt orange sunset color. Now, modern reprintings or even later original printings have this really kind of bright garish orange. It's a much more lively or bright looking sunset, and that's how you know that it was done later. The first ones were done with this more burnished, almost metallic grayish orange. So again, because I love the scene, I love the story, this was a print that I decided to hang on to. I had a few more 100 Aspects of the Moon prints pass through my hands that I did not keep, but I kept these two, this one and the Takeda Shingen, and I don't have any regrets about that. They are expensive prints. They I could probably sell both of them for $300 to $500 depending on the conditions and the buyer, but they're among the more expensive prints in my collection. The last one I want to show today is this one. I do have a couple other Meiji era prints, but I'll try to get that in a future video. This one, again, has that really fanciful cuts and coloration to show the wind in this scene. This is also very, very vibrant, beautiful colors that have stayed over the years. And I particularly like this print not only for the wind depiction, but the fact that it actually has lettering rather than kanji or hiragana, and it says kaze fuku. This one is a springtime picnic. They're obviously out enjoying the cherry blossoms, and the wind is picked up and is really, this is really a beautiful scene. You can see this gentleman has lost his hat. He's in that sort of hybrid clothing of the Meiji era. You've got kind of this Western style hat and top coat or cloak, but the women are still in kimono, representing the changing of the eras. But I kept this particular print because for some reason this series is not particularly valuable. I think maybe there's just many prints out there. I think it's not very rare, but I kept this one because it's in such great condition. I mean, the margins, there's no trimming, full margins. The colors are vibrant, beautiful, haven't really faded at all. The detail, the block lines are very very strong. Like, a lot of times when you look at prints, you'll see like gaps in the lines, these fine lines for like nose or hair. You know, the more a woodblock is used in the printing, the more it wears out, and these fine lines can wear off of the woodblock print, and so later printings don't look as sharp and there's pieces missing. And this one doesn't have any of that. Strong wood grain pattern in the background of the print. So this is about as close to a top condition print as I have in my collection. So I think it's beautiful. It's one that I like to display in the springtime, and that's why I've kept it. Thank you very, very much for watching today. Obviously, I haven't completed the entirety of my collection. I will do so in a further video featuring my Edo era prints, so everything pre-1860. So please look forward to that. Thank you very much for watching this particular video. I hope you enjoyed looking at the prints in my collection. There are a few, like I mentioned, on display, and I haven't gotten to the Edo era ones yet. I hope you enjoyed looking at my collection. If you have any questions about ukiyo-e collecting, buying, appraising, by all means, you can contact me, in the comments below, or you can DM me on social media. Instagram, I'm at xchapter, and I do have a xchapter page on Facebook. You can find me there as well. Thank you so very, very much for watching, and if you have not yet poured the drinks for the like button and the subscribe button, now is the time to show your appreciation. So thank you very, very much for watching today's video, and I look forward to seeing you again. Peace.